Nuggie is here to tell you all of her favorite reads. I 100% should have DNF'd this book. Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. For those of you that are new here, my name is Rochelle. I read a variety of books and I also have a disability, and today what we're going to do is go over my best and worst books in the year of 2026. Now, in the previous years, I believe I did the tier ranking, which honestly I absolutely love a good tier rank, but I just didn't really feel in the mood to go and do that. Even though I read around 89 books, it just felt like a lot of work to go and rank all the books, get everything set up. So instead, what we're going to do is we're going to go through all the months and go over my favorite and my least favorite book for each month. Now, for some of these months, the book picks were really difficult because I had a few really great months and read a lot of really amazing books, but I wanted this video to be a little bit more on the quicker end. So because of that, I'm going to keep things limited to one book that was my favorite and then another book that was my least favorite. And if you're really curious, I'll go and leave a playlist of my monthly wrap-up. So if you're a bit more curious about specific books, you can just go to those videos and hear my thoughts for all of those books that I read during that month. So starting off with the month of January, my best book was actually The Grace Year by Kim Liggett. I absolutely loved this book. This was something that was so different from anything I've read before, and honestly, I haven't found a similar book that has given me those same exact feelings. So with this book, the grace year is something that is forbidden. No one can go and talk about it, but it has this kind of ominous feeling towards it where all these young girls know that once they're 16, they have to be sent away for the grace year to get rid of all these powers that have been building up with them, because they have some sort of aphrodisiac in their skin that basically lures men away from their wives and commits all these things that aren't very appropriate for their town. It was a very interesting concept and I was incredibly intrigued by this book. So we follow our main character who is basically reaching the age of 16 and has to get sent away for the grace year, and they go to this specific location that has these big walls and kind of this ramshackled shack that all these young girls have to go and live in, and they have to stay there for a period of time where they will be said to get rid of all these powers before they can come back to their town and be married off to their husbands that have basically staked a claim on these young girls. This was a very interesting and full of female rage type of book. I absolutely love this dystopian world that this author brought us into. I have never read anything by this author before, and honestly, I kind of want to go and read through their backlist after this book because I loved this so much. I believe this is a young adult book, but to be honest, it did not feel like a young adult book at all to me. It talked about some incredibly difficult topics, and given our society that we're living in right now, I mean, it's sad to say, but some of these things I could potentially see happening. Then the book that I did not like in the month of January was actually The Brown Girl in the Ring by Nalo Hopkinson. So this story honestly caught my attention because it was a mix of dystopian but also Caribbean folklore, and I love a good dystopian book, if you can't tell by my first choice for the best book of the month. But this one honestly left me kind of scratching my head. I felt a little bit confused with it. This book was honestly very difficult for me to follow along. This felt like a lot of things went over my head, but there were a lot of really great topics that were discussed in this book, such as poverty, healthcare, ethnicity that was intermixed with some darker themes. So with this book, I would highly recommend going and checking your trigger warnings. Unfortunately, this book wasn't for me, and I think I just had different expectations built up for it in my head, and this was one of the books that I did go and unhaul, I think, towards the beginning of the year, because it just wasn't for me, and I'd rather have that book go to someone that would love it a lot more than I would have. Then in February, the best book that I read that month was Parable of the Sower by Octavia E. Butler. Octavia E. Butler is one of my all-time favorite authors. There is just a way that she has of writing things that really hit. And the thing is, with a lot of her books, she writes about things in the future. And it's scary because if you've read any one of her books, you can automatically see where she's coming from, and just wonder if she has a way of looking into the future, because it feels like she is completely spot on, which is absolutely terrifying, especially in today's day and age that we're living in. Huge dumpster fire. So I want to actually go and read my review for this, because this was a book that I obviously read in February, and we're currently in January of 2026, so some things are going to be a little bit more hazier in my memory. But I said Parable of the Sour isn't an easy book to read. It's one of those books where you need to be in the right place and right mood to read, and sometimes it might never feel right to do so. There are so many difficult themes and moments in this book. It's dark, it's gruesome, it has truths that, given the current time we're in, seem likely to happen. It's currently February 11th, 2025, when I was writing this, when I have finished this book, and Parable of the Sour takes place from 2024 to 2027, which is scary as heck. I want to include a portion that I read that will stick with me and that I will continue to think about after finishing this book. In the reading group guide for this book, Octavia E. Butler says, "I hope people who read Parable of the Sour will think about where we seem to be heading. We, the United States, even we, the human species. Where are we going? What sort of future are we creating? Is it the kind of future you want to live in? If it isn't, what can we do to create a better future? Individually and in groups, what can we do?" Like I said, Octavia E. Butler went and wrote this book and had it set in the years of 2024 to 2027. And for anyone that has read this book, especially right now, because it's 2026, you can easily notice some themes that are very accurate for what we're dealing with in today's society. And this book is honestly on the banned book list for a reason. So this is a book that I would highly recommend picking up if you haven't already done so, but also please take care of your mental health, because times are hard, and sometimes I know that it's really difficult to read books like this, especially when you're wanting to escape some of these factors that are currently going on. The worst book that I read in February was actually The Institute by Kayla Howarth. This one was a book that I believe I picked up on a Stuff Your Kindle day, and with my Defend the TBR board game that I made, I ended up going and picking up a Kindle read, and I decided to go with this book. It was a dystopian book, and I've noticed that at the beginning of last year, I was really in the dystopian book mood, and honestly, I'm never not in that mood. I love those books. But with this one, it intrigued me so much, but sadly fell extremely flat. I don't know what was going on with this book, but it constantly felt like I had to go and backtrack multiple pages or multiple chapters because the flow of the story just didn't make sense. It felt like I skipped pages, and just the flow of the events and the conversations made no sense to me. So this book was definitely a disappointment, and honestly, if I had a physical copy of it, it probably would have been on my unhaul list last year. Granted, even though it wasn't a favorite book for me, the cliffhanger that things left off with was intriguing enough where it felt like maybe I would go and continue on reading with the series just to know what happens. From the few pieces I can remember, I think that there are these people that have certain powers and are kind of like mutants in a way, and if the government finds out about them, they get taken away. And with this family, the girl's younger brother has a certain gift, and she's really trying to make sure that he's hidden, nothing happens. Well, unfortunately, there was a moment that kind of alerted the law enforcement in that area, and her family had to go and run away. But sadly, things didn't work out, and she got taken. And she's living in this institute and trying to learn how she can get back to her family, but also how she can survive in this new situation that she's in. And like I said, it was a very intriguing premise, but the flow and the writing just didn't connect the dots and make things make sense. So it was a really difficult book to push myself to finish reading because I felt constantly confused. Moving on to March, the best book that I read this month was Bing Su for Two by Sujin Witherspoon. This was actually a book that I got from an influencer program I was in, and I'm so glad I got a copy of it because I devoured this book and I loved it so much. And I will give the disclaimer now: if you read this book, you will be craving bingsu. I had never had bingsu before this book, and then I could not stop myself. I constantly was dragging my partner and saying, hey, we need to get bingsu today. So with this story, we start out with a boy that basically in the past 24 hours, he broke up with his girlfriend, he walked out of the SATs, and he quit his job. He's kind of feeling like he's a screw up. There's nothing that's gonna happen in his life that is going to be fulfilling, and he's a disappointment to his parents. But as he's walking around, he kind of runs into this hole in the wall mom and pop bingsu place, decides to go and say, hey, hire me, I want to work here. And while he's doing that, he basically learns like these people have a great business that they absolutely love, but unfortunately they're not doing anything to help out their business and promote them and have good marketing. And while he's trying to help them go and get things set up, he learns that this business was actually one that he helped his parents try to run to the ground and close up. So he feels extremely guilty by this. And while the story progresses, he's not only trying to go and help this company so that they can continue doing what they love, but he's also trying to go and feel better and make up for this horrible mistake he does. And it was just a very cute story. I really enjoyed this. There were a few moments that I was giggling and laughing at some parts that happened. I believe this also was the author's debut book as well, so I'm interested to see what other books they go and write. Then for the worst book that I read in March, it was actually Womb City by Totolo Tomase, and this was a book that disappointed me so much. I started out reading it physically and then I switched over to listening to it as an audiobook because I kid you not, I could barely get through a single page reading it physically. So basically with this book, it was a cyberpunk body-hopping ghost story exploring motherhood, memory, and a woman's right to her own body, which honestly, hearing any of those things, I thought it would be right up my alley. I thought this would be a book that I absolutely devoured, but it just did not work for me. Describes it as set in a cruel futuristic surveillance state where bodies are a government-issued resource. This harrowing story is a twisty, nail-biting commentary on power, monstrosity, and bodily autonomy. So I'm honestly struggling with how to fully go and explain this book and my feelings towards it, as well as giving a good summary, because like I said, this was a book, even looking back at the description of the book, trying to go and spark up and remember key pieces of it, I can't do so because when I read the description, in my head, it's like, yes, I would love this book. But when I try to recollect anything, it's like, no, you didn't, because this book confused the heck out of you. You felt like a lot of themes went over your head. It just didn't flow right, any of those pieces. So this is one I'm just going to have to leave with the fact that I didn't enjoy it. And it absolutely sucks. It's still a disappointment that I couldn't enjoy this book. And who knows, maybe this is a book that could work for you and the key pieces that I went and read off to you spark interest. If it does, and if this is a book that you love, then I'm so excited and also jealous for you because I wanted that to be the case for me with this book. Moving on to April, the best book that I read was Hidden Pictures by Jason Recklick. This was one that I just devoured. I loved this so much. And another factor that made me enjoy this book as much as I did is that there's these pictures throughout some of the chapters of the book. And you just want to know like what these pictures mean. Why does it start out cute and then progressively get more and more terrifying and horror-filled? With this story, our main character is a nanny. She just got into her journey of being sober because she had this really bad drug addiction. And her sponsor is like, hey, I have a great job opportunity for you with this family that needs a nanny for their little boy. They are willing to go and hire you, knowing your background and everything like that. So she's like, cool, but also very nervous, and shows up on their doorsteps. The mother 100% wants to bring her in. It's like, hey, you're hired. Whereas the husband's a little bit more hesitant and isn't completely sure, but the wife goes and persuades him, and the nanny goes and moves into their guest house. As she's nannying this little boy, she kind of learns that she absolutely adores them so, so much. And while going and doing interactions and stuff like that with them, she starts to notice that some of the drawings that this boy has have very disturbing qualities in them. And when she goes and questions the boy, he doesn't seem to really know or understand why he's drawing these things or what possibly happened. So she starts kind of doing some investigation, and there seems to be some paranormal pieces involved in it. And I'm going to leave it there, but I loved this book so much. This was my first book by Jason Recklick. There's some other books that he's written that I really want to read and I'm very curious about, but if you haven't read this one already, highly recommend. Now for my worst book in April, and this is probably a book that I very much hated and annoyed the heck out of me, and that was Their Monstrous Hearts by Nugget Turnham. I probably should have DNF'd this book. I 100% should have DNF'd this book, but it was an audiobook that I actually got through NetGalley, and usually when it's an arc of some sort, I do try my hardest to go and finish and actually read the book. Oh my gosh, this one was incredibly annoying and infuriating. I found myself rolling my eyes multiple times. I did not like our female main character. Her voice was so whiny. Not even like, you know, saying that the narrator, it was the way that this character was written. Her voice was so whiny, and I couldn't cheer for her. I couldn't cheer for anyone in this book. I don't like the word hate, but I hated this book so much, and I'm so glad that I didn't get a physical copy of it because the cover itself was beautiful, and I was very tempted to actually get a physical copy of this book, and I'm glad I didn't because I don't usually throw books, but I feel like I would have thrown that book at the wall. And I feel awful because I'm sounding so mean right now, but I did not like that book. It was the worst book I read last year by far. All right, then we're gonna move on to a happier, which is talking about my books in May. And this book was, I believe, my first 5-star read, and that was For Whom the Bell Tolls by J.C. Lynn. I honestly never heard of this author before. I know she has a very popular TikTok series, and this one I think someone described as kind of like the prequel for her TikTok series. I got an audiobook for this from Saga Press, and after I finished it, I had to go and get myself a physical copy, but later learned that they actually had a sprayed edge version, and I had to trade up for this one because it is beautiful. I love this book so much, and I actually am gifting one of my old copies to a friend so that she can read it and I can talk about it with her. So with this book, and honestly it's not really a spoiler because it says it on it, our main character dies. She gets brought into the afterlife, but the thing is, she kind of learns that she needs a purpose and she needs something to do while she's down there. And she finds that she's constantly drawn to hell, more specifically where it's like the different floors of hell. And she sees that they kind of need like some sort of help there. Like the demons there are doing their best, but some of the sinners that are down there that are waiting to get sorted into certain areas, they have a lot of complaints. They're not happy about things, and there's basically a lot of Karens. Let's just leave it there. And so Lily, our main character, decides that she's going to put up a help desk, or more specifically a help desk, and help go and talk to all these sinners and basically calm them down before they go to where they need to be. But while doing that, she kind of draws the attention of a lot of other demons, more specifically one named Belle, and they develop this little nerdy friendship that soon becomes something a little bit more. There's also a character named Sharky, and honestly, I loved this book. I was cracking up so many times and also crying significantly. This was a book that I absolutely adored. more than I ever expected I would, and I would highly recommend going and picking it up. And I'm honestly waiting for the author to make the next book because it targets some other characters that we learn about in this first. Then the worst book that I read in May was probably She Left by Stacey Gray. This one was one that just kind of left me feeling a little bit disappointed. With this book, our main character, she basically walked away from a party 20 years ago, but within the hour after she left, all of the people there that were at that party died. And since this event, she's been feeling a huge amount of guilt. And when it comes to the anniversary of this massacre, a lot of people that have connections with the people that died at this house are all asked to come to this location. And so she comes along as well, but she quickly learns that getting asked here wasn't exactly what it seems, and little by little people end up going and getting picked off. I remember that I was incredibly curious about this book, but slowly as I got deeper and deeper into the book, it just kind of lost my interest. And basically the little twist and the moments of reveal at the end were pretty lackluster and a bit of a disappointment to me. So that is why this one was kind of the worst book that I picked out for this month. It just didn't wow me as much as I had hoped it would have. Then for June, the book that I absolutely loved more than anything was Night and the Moth by Rachel Gillig. Now, earlier in the year, I read One Dark Window by this author, and honestly, like, it was good, but I was kind of meh on it. But then I saw this book, I saw the art, and I kind of heard about the knight involved in this book, who is kind of like this emo, sultry guy that wears eyeliner, and I was like, you know what? Count me in, sign me up. I'm curious. Then I kind of heard things about a companion that was a gargoyle that could talk, and I got really nervous. I wasn't sure if with that addition that would mean that the book would be for me and that I enjoy it, but honestly, I was so wrong. With the story, our main character is a diviner, and she kind of has like this shroud covering over her eyes. No one has ever seen her eyes, and the same goes for her fellow diviners. And they're basically reaching the time that they're going to be free and live their own lives, not being diviners anymore. But all of her sisters basically go and disappear slowly, and she's not entirely sure what has happened to them. So she decides that she's going to go and enlist the help of a knight and his king who had shown up right before her sisters disappeared. And with their begrudging help, she is trying to backtrack and figure out what exactly happened, but also has her gargoyle companion with her that always calls everyone Bartholomew. And I know it sounds weird. I know like that seems a little bit confusing and bizarre, but honestly, I loved this book so much. I know a lot of other people really enjoyed it as well. And as things go with Rachel Gillig, she always loves leaving her books with a huge cliffhanger, and honestly, that's what she did with this book. I felt like I needed 5 to 7 business days just to go and recover and process everything that I read. And the next book comes out in September, and honestly, I'm counting down the days. I need to know what happens. The worst book that I read for June was actually The Living Dead by George A. Romero and Daniel Kraus. I am a huge zombie lover. I love zombies, apocalypses, things like that. I absolutely devour zombie TV shows and movies, as long as they aren't too cheesy. If they're cheesy, I don't mind them, but I prefer more of the stories that are more like The Walking Dead. I want them to seem really intense and brutal and terrifying. I want those feelings. So with The Living Dead, I was honestly very curious about this book. I almost picked up a copy at a used bookstore, but then decided against it and borrowed an audiobook from the library instead. And it was so boring. This was such an incredibly boring book. I think there was also just like some sexist comments, some racist comments as well. And honestly, I get it, because that was kind of what those specific characters' personalities and stuff was, but it just wasn't for me and was pretty much a disappointing read for that month. Then for July, I decided to do a reread of The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins. I know that there's The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes and Sunrise on the Reaping, and I want to read those books so badly, but I read the Hunger Games series, I believe, back in high school, and I want to go and relive these books first before going on to the prequel books, just so that I have a little bit more of that world in my head before I go into there. And I was so happy that I reread this book because honestly, it still holds up. It is still amazing, and I actually did rate this one 5 stars. I love this series so much. Suzanne Collins can do no wrong, and just the messages and the call out she has with her books are amazing. So if you're not familiar with this, there's basically the Hunger Games that happens after a certain amount of years. I can't recall on the top of my head, but there are 12 different districts, and there are 2 tributes that are chosen from each district, and they basically are thrown into this arena type thing by President Snow, and whoever goes and survives and kills off all these others is the winner, and there can only be one winner. And then after so long, the cycle basically continues again, and there's a whole other challenge and everything in that arena as well. And it's just basically the show that a lot of these poor people in these districts are putting on for the richy rich that are in the capital. And it's such a good story. It's also very frustrating and angering, and I'm just gonna leave it here. Reading is political, okay? Then for the worst book this month, I probably would pick Nocticadia by Carrie Lake. I was kind of wanting to go and get a little bit of an inside look into Carrie Lake's writing because Anathema was on my radar, and it was a book that I really did want to read, but I wasn't finding an option to go and pick up an audiobook for it, but there was one for Nocticadia. So I picked up this one, and honestly, I didn't like it. I think I'm kind of learning with the tropes that I do and don't like to read. One that I'm not a fan of is one where it's dating a teacher. My partner is an elementary school counselor, and yes, I know that with this story, it involves consenting adults, but something about the teacher-student dynamic, it just doesn't work for me. There were also some other pieces in this book that I just didn't enjoy either. I believe this is a dark romance, and dark romance is something that I'm trying to kind of test out the waters and see if it works, but this kind was just not for me. Moving on to August, my best read of that month was The Guest House by Robin Morgan Bentley. This was a book that I really enjoyed, and yes, I agree with some reviews that if the premise of this story was happening today, it wouldn't work. It would not work. Like a couple that is expecting their first child that goes to an Airbnb or a bed and breakfast where the owners there are also staying but won't let the couple leave and want their baby. Yeah, there's going to be red flags. You're probably not going to go and stay there, and it probably won't happen. You'll have your baby, you'll get out safely, but that doesn't happen in this book, and there's a lot more high stakes and events that happen, and also flashbacks and pieces. But the book was just so enjoyable for me, and I don't know, it worked. And another piece that I really loved with this is that the author has cerebral palsy, and the main male character also has cerebral palsy. So there's a little bit of representation in those books as well. And the fact that it was something that the author experienced as well was something I liked. It was an unexpected piece because I didn't really expect that book to have disability representation in it, but it did. And I just loved the book. I sadly don't have a physical copy of it because the copy that I had happened to be a used library book, and it had some gross stuff in it, so I had to unhaul it, but I'm hoping to get a new copy of it and slowly build up my collection that has disability representation in it. Then the worst book that I read for August was Stranger Danger by Maren Stoffels. This one was one that honestly, the back of the book as well as the cover of the book were completely deceiving because what it seemed like that book would be was not what it was at all. So it is a pretty thin book. I think it's almost the size of a novella, maybe a little bit bigger. But I have here in my review that if you're looking for a quick horror story about kids alone in a farmhouse, then this is not the book for you. You don't really get a chance to know the characters at all, and yes, the book was written well and made made in a way that it was a very quick read, but this truthfully felt more like a mystery with a hint of a thrill and zero horror. There was also a moment towards the end where the reveal happened, and it honestly irked me. I was not too happy with what happened and the events that took place, so it was a bit of a bummer for me, but I am curious to go and read other books by this author because their writing style really worked well for me. It was something that just made it like a really quick nighttime read, like a nighttime snack of a book. So I am curious to see their other books, even though that one wasn't a favorite for me. Then for September, the best book that I read was Isle of Ember by Alicia E. Anderson. This is the second book in her series, and her first book is actually The Enchanted Isles. This was an author that I tried out for the first time last year, and honestly, I'm so excited to read the other books in the series. I think there's at least, I keep saying this, but I think there's 7 because each one of the books goes and takes place on a different island. And if you haven't tried out these books, I would 100% recommend them because they're kind of like a mixture of Pirates of the Caribbean, The Mummy, and Atlantis. And if you like pirates, if you like adventures and looking for lost relics and enchanted items, these books are totally for you. It is so good. The first book kind of seems like it's a little bit of a why choose romance because there's a lot of different love interests, but it kind of seems like it does eventually taper down to a few specifically instead of multiple. So I am intrigued to see where it goes, but this one was honestly my favorite. I think it actually got me to cry a few times, and I also loved our main character. She is a librarian. She very much reminds me of Evie from The Mummy, and it's really fun to go and see how her character progresses with each book. Then moving on to the worst book that I read in September, I would probably have to pick How to Help a Hungry Werewolf by Charlotte Stein. This one I did go and listen to as an audiobook, and I was really curious because with someone that also kind of struggles with my own body image and everything, going and reading a book where it has more of a curvier main character was something that I was really excited to go and dive into. But with this book, it just didn't work for me. So our main character kind of learns that she's a witch while she's going and cleaning out her grandmother's house for her grandma that unfortunately has passed away. And while she's doing that, who ends up showing up but her ex-best friend who is now her enemy, and he's looking for her grandma because he needs help because he has a very serious problem of being a werewolf. But our main character doesn't want to help him because once upon a time they used to be best friends until he basically pulled a prank on her that embarrassed the heck out of her and called her out on her body shape. And this book was a little bit frustrating and the plot just kind of lost me. There was a lot of very fat-phobic comments, which I just don't like. I really don't like body shaming stuff. I'm all here for body positivity and everything. So yeah, this book was just not it. It was not really one that I enjoyed. I believe it was a pretty quick read, and whoever the narrator was did an amazing job, but yeah, I just wasn't a fan of that book. Then for October, I think the book that I'm gonna pick is going to be Immortal Dark by Taiga Sturma, but like the title says, this book is very, very dark. There were a few things in this book that I wasn't too fond of, but at the same time, this book series had a different premise and piqued up my curiosity. There are vampires involved in this and kind of like different founding families for this university. And honestly, I feel like this is one of those books that has characters that are almost darker than morally gray, where you really wonder if you can go and cheer them on and if you want them to achieve their goals. And it was so different than what I normally read. So I am curious to go and try out the next book. I believe I do have a copy of it. And I feel like maybe going into this book with the least bit of knowledge possible might be the best way to go about this. Then the worst book that I had for the month of October would be Hollow Girls by Jessica Drake Thomas. This was one that I borrowed from the library, and honestly it was a little bit of a disappointment. I'm not quite sure what I was expecting for it, but it did seem to have like those darker, trickier fae involved in the story. This book did have some mysteries involved in it, but I honestly just found myself zoning out and just hoping to go and finish the book. So yeah, it wasn't really one that I was really too fond of. For November, I honestly can't pick. I read so many amazing books. I read Anathema, Dungeon Crawler Carl, Goddess of Filth, The Spell Shop, Cemetery Boys, You Watched in Silence. There are so many amazing books that I read in this month that honestly, I can't pick just one. I think I will go and say like The Spell Shop was one book that I actually rated 5 stars. This was one that made me bawl my eyes out, but also made me realize that although I love cozy fantasies, they're usually going to be books that I'm going to need a box of tissues near me because they just remind me of my grandma with all the very whimsy and cozy factors that these books usually involve. So yeah, I'm just gonna have to point you to go and listen to my November reading wrap up because it is so hard for me to pick just one favorite book for this month. Now for my least favorite book, that's a little bit easier. I would probably have to pick The Revelator by Daryl Gregory. This was one where it kind of seemed to be a secluded cult type of story, but honestly, I really lost interest in it pretty early on. There were some intriguing pieces with an old god that these people go and worship, but also there's only specific people that have to be women that are able to go and connect and talk to this god. But after that, it just kind of lost me. I didn't really get what I was hoping to get with this book. It kind of seemed to just be the characters living their day-to-day lives and then hinting at this old god, and you wanted to know more about it, but you never really got that. So yeah, it just wasn't a book that I really enjoyed. Then for December, I actually only read 2 books, and as you can tell, being a few days into January, I haven't done a reading wrap-up for December because I only read 2 books, and that just didn't really feel like enough to go and put together a video for. So because I can't really pick a best and a worst book, I'm just going to give you my wrap up for that month since we're giving at least 2 books for each month. So Listen to Your Sister by Nina Veal was a book that I picked up because it was said in a synopsis to kind of be a book that was for people that really enjoy Jordan Peele movies, and all of Jordan Peele's movies have been some of my favorites. I love them so much, and for my partner who does not like horrors at all, I have gotten him to go and sit down and watch a lot of Jordan Peele's movies with me, and they love those movies as well. So with this book, I was so excited to go and pick it up. It was also one that I was reading specifically for Wicked Readings Horror Bingo Board because I want to do hard mode, and I needed to finish that book before the year wrapped up. With this one, we're following 3 characters. One is a sister with her 2 brothers, and she has basically become the sole guardian of her younger brother after her parents were no longer fit to be their parents. And she is trying her hardest, but she's also struggling to go and do a lot of things such as working and keeping her full-time job because her brother is a little bit rebellious and is constantly getting in trouble. And her other brother, who went and promised to go and help her raise the younger brother, isn't really doing so, and he's just kind of never around whenever she needs his help. And while this is going on, she tends to have something equivalent to nightmares where she finds her brothers get killed right before her eyes and she's not able to go and save them. And because of something her brother did, her younger brother did, they have to go and run away to this cabin and stay there until things basically go and die down. But then something happens and suddenly they're all living in the sister's nightmare. And this book was good, but at the same time, I found it incredibly infuriating. I felt so bad for the sister and a lot of the things that she had to deal with. It took away from my enjoyment of the book and actually made me more angry than anything. It was good, but honestly, I feel like this book I would have enjoyed much more if it was a movie. And honestly, if it got a movie adaptation for it, I would 100% sit down and watch it because I feel like that would just do the story a little bit more justice than what the physical book did for me. And I feel like that's such a bizarre phrase coming from my mouth because usually I always prefer the book over the movie with something. Then for the other book that I read in the month of December, I read Too Old for This by Samantha Downing. And with this one, we follow an older, elderly, basically retired serial killer, and she's just trying to go about living her life, but one thing leads to another, and suddenly she kills someone and has to try to make it so she doesn't get caught and no one catches on to what happened. But things keep happening. She's also realizing, as the title says, she is way too old for this. She is way too old to be a retired serial killer, and she just wants to go about living her life. So while the story is progressing, we also get moments in her past that basically led her to being a serial killer, who her first kill was, and things like that. And it kind of felt like, if anyone knows Joe Goldberg, either from the TV show You or the books You, it very much reminded me of that, with the internal dialogue that the main character had. She wasn't really someone that I was rooting for, but I was like, sure, I'll listen to this. I'm here for the adventure. I want to know what's going to happen in this story. But yeah, it really wasn't a favorite for me, but I am glad that I read it because I know a lot of people were talking about this book. But yeah, those were all of my favorites and least favorite books in the year of 2025. I did like kind of doing this change up, but I think I probably will have to go back to doing the tier ranking because honestly, I love that so much. I think it's so much fun. But if you prefer this over tier ranking, definitely let me know down in the comments below. As I mentioned in the beginning, it really was hard for me to pick a favorite book because there were so many books that I absolutely loved. So here in the background, I will put some honorable mention covers because a lot of these other books I absolutely adored. They were so much fun and were also incredibly good reads for me, but because I didn't want this video to be a million years long, but looking at how long this video is, it probably is a million years long. So that will be editing Rochelle's problem. But I'm definitely curious, what was your favorite book for the year of 2025 and what was your least favorite book for the year of 2025? Definitely let me know in the comments below. I'm curious to see if maybe you hated a book that I absolutely loved, or the opposite. Maybe you had the same as me, and some of the books that I absolutely adored, they were some of your favorites as well. I'm definitely curious to know. But as always, if you don't know what to comment at the end of my video and you'd still like to let me know that you're here and you watched all the way through, maybe go and leave a calendar emote, since we went through every single month in the year of 2025 to go over my favorite and least favorite book for that month. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. I'm sorry it's a little bit delayed. The month has kind of gotten away from me, and there's a bunch of other videos that I still need to film and put together for y'all. So hopefully you're excited for that. If you are, please consider going and subscribing, possibly leave a like. And as always, I wrap up my videos with this reminder to always remember that you're worthy and capable of amazing things. Bye, friends. Am I in your spot? Did I move your bed? Yeah, I moved your bed. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Yes.